I absolutely love low poly. It's probably one of my most favorite things on par with miniature robots. But yeah, on par with that, it's one of my most favorite things to actually model. It was about 8 years ago when I first started Blender, and this image here inspired me to learn how to do this. This was my original motivation. So I want to teach you how to make some cool low poly scenes that you can be really proud of, that you want to show people and share with people, and hopefully learn some tricks that you can use in other areas of your 3D modeling. Before I begin, I would just like to say thank you to everybody who has subscribed to me so far. I've recently just hit a milestone, which is quite significant for this channel. So thank you. Thank you so much for subscribing. And hopefully you're one of my return viewers. So I appreciate it so much. So let's start in the preferences window. Now, if you come across to the add-ons tab just here, and if you type in extra into the search, it'll give you two results. You have add curve extra objects and add mesh extra objects. Just enable those two. It'll just make things a little bit easier for us. When I first started Blender, I didn't like the idea of add-ons. For some reason, I just felt like everything needed to be done manually. Everything that I did needed to be done myself, because otherwise I felt like I was cheating by using add-ons. But the reality is, you're not. You're just making things simpler for you. You're making things easier, faster, and more efficient. So don't be scared to enable add-ons. So we will come back to those add-ons a little bit later. To begin with, what we need to do is we need to create we'll start off making the surface of the island. So if you press Control A, and then if you add an icosphere, now you see down here you've got like the properties of the command that you've just done. So you can actually change how many like subdivisions of this icosphere. So a normal icosphere is, I think, 2 subdivisions. You can actually crank that up to 4, and it gives you extra geometry. And this is kind of handy because we're going to need to work with this. Now, if you press Tab, you'll go into edit mode. And what we want to do is we want to reshape this sphere into more of a disc shape. So if you press 7, this will align the view to the top. And then if you press in 1, it will take you into vertex select mode, and you just select this top vertex there. Now, one thing that you might have noticed is that I'm using my right mouse button to select. This is because I have used Blender for a long time. I've used it for 8 years, and when I started using Blender, the only option you had was right click to select. This has become part of who I am. I don't think that I could easily change to left click, so just bear that in mind when you see me right clicking to select. You probably need to left click. You can change this in the preferences. I don't know why anyone would want to select with right click. It seems very counterintuitive, but I'm used to it personally, so I can't change, I'm afraid. Anyway, so select your vertice there, and then if you press Control and 7, this will spin the sphere around to the bottom, and so you can shift click to select the bottom vertice as well. So we can see here, if we press 1 on the number pad, we'll go to the front view, and we can see that we have the top one selected here, and we have the bottom one selected there. Now, just a point while we're spinning things around. So 1 is front view, Control 1 is rear view, 3 is side view, and Control 3 is the opposite side view. And as we've just seen, 7 is top and Control 7 is bottom. So let's spin back to front view. Now we have this tool here, it's called proportional editing, and we need to enable this, and the hotkey for that is O on the keyboard, or you can just press this icon here and it'll turn it on. You also have this little drop down menu next to it with this little lump. So if you drop this down and you see that this tick box here, it says connected only, that'll probably be unticked. As a general rule of thumb, I like to keep that on, because if you don't have it on, it can sometimes affect things that you don't want to be affected. It's good to know. Let me just quickly sort of demonstrate what that means. So I'm just going to add in another UV sphere here, or rather a first UV sphere. I'm just going to move it to the side there. Okay. Now, if we have connected only on, So we can scale this with the proportional edit, and we can like grab this vertex here and we can scale it, and you see how it like affects the vertices around it. So if we come and change this to connected only off, and then we scale it, you see how it's kind of affecting the sphere that's next to it. So you might not want that. You may want it in some particular scenarios, but in this one we don't want that. So I'm just going to undo this just to get rid of those. Bring us back to where we are and connected only. So what I want to do is I want to scale this on the z-axis, and I'm going to bring it down to maybe like kind of like a pumpkin shape to some degree. Now this doesn't look like an island too much, but what we can do is we can change the details here. So we can come to this slider here. We can change how much we've scaled something. We can also change the fall off type. So we have different types of fall off. So random, this is going to go a little bit crazy. So you see that scales kind of random vertices. The constant, this will make it just flat. So it's like it's all or nothing basically with that one. So you have different types of fall off. What I like is the inverse square, and the way that this works is you can see that it's sort of affecting the outside a lot more than it is the inside. And so I'm going to leave it on this inverse square, and just going to bring this kind of down so it's got a little bit of a divot in there, and that'll give us a nice little disc. Yeah, so next thing we can do is let's go to select, and we're going to click on select random, and it's just going to give us a load of random points that we can select from. Now that you can do this with faces, you can do this with edges, whatever you're looking for, whichever mode that you're in, it will select a random amount. So you can increase it, you can decrease it. So if you want it kind of like a high ratio or a low ratio, you can do. And what this is good for is if, say, for example, you have the proportional editing and you change that to random, and you can scale it, you see, maybe like say the z-axis, it'll do just those, and it just kind of like makes it less of an intense sort of effect, you see. We can maybe go like that and scale just on the z-axis perhaps with a smaller fall off. I think it kind of looks like a rough, like a more rocky kind of surface to it. So it still looks a little bit spherical. So if we press Control and Tab, and then we go into sculpt mode, don't be scared by sculpting. We're not really sculpting. We're just using this particular tool to help us get things looking the way that we want. It's almost like using the proportional editing, but I think it gives you a little bit more flexibility, a little bit more simplicity to it, because we don't have to be grabbing specific points. You see where that yellow dot is? That's highlighting the actual vertice that you would have to select. It's kind of lazy, but I think it works well, and it's a trick that I often use. So what we can do is we can use this elastic deform, and we just need to pull out some shapes into it. You don't need to worry too much about what's going on. We can grab a little bit down here so it's kind of like hanging over the edge. We can put a little mound on there, just basically giving it a bit of character more than anything else. There we go. So that's looking more island-like, I'm sure you'd agree. So we can come out of sculpt mode and go into object mode. And the reason that we don't need to worry too much about using the sculpt mode is because it's not adding any extra geometry. It's just shifting around the vertices, just in the same way that if, say, we had in proportional editing, so we could just grab stuff, but it just kind of this feels a little harsher than the elastic deform in the sculpting panel. Okay, so it's good practice as well to rename all of your objects so that you can find them in the hierarchy. So we can say, call that land, I suppose, and there we go. So what I'll do now actually is I'm just going to move this up a little bit, because a lot of things that you create, they create around the world origin, not necessarily the 3D cursor, especially in the case of some of them, the modifiers that we've added on, the add-ons, sorry. So the next thing I want to do is I want to make some rocks. So if we Shift A to add a new object, and so you probably see now that you've got a lot more objects than you had previously. This is because of the extra objects add-on. So you see here we've got a rock generator. This is pretty cool. It's a little bit volatile, but it's kind of nice, and it makes some interesting shapes. It makes things, like I say, a little bit simpler for you. First things first, let's uncheck use random seed, and this will allow us to just slowly come through the different objects and find some kind of nice round ones. That one looks a nice shape, so we can stick with that one. We can actually increase the number of rocks that we have as well. So we have these rocks, these rocks, these rocks, right? So we don't want too many rocks. What we're going to do as well is that these rocks are, I think these are designed to be more on the realistic side. I don't particularly like that. So we can actually come and turn off the, well, first of all, let's press W and then shade flat, and this will give us, you see this kind of look here that we've got, and then we can turn off the top subsurf modifier. You can actually delete that, and it's gone. We'll do the same for this one. W, shade flat, and this one W, shade flat, and remove that. So the look is starting to look a little bit more like the look of here, but we've got more triangles on this one. So you see it's all triangles. So what we can do is we can select all of the meshes together, and we can Control A and visual geometry to mesh. And what this will do is it'll turn the modifiers into real geometry, you see. So if we select all of these again and press tab, it'll go into edit mode for all three of these objects. And if we press Control T, it'll triangulate these, and it'll keep the look a little bit more like this look that we've got here. Now, if you wanted to make these a little bit rougher, we could say come to Mesh, Transform, Randomize, and you see it's kind of moving the vertices around, so we can adjust it a little bit here. We don't want it too much, because one of the pitfalls that we have with the randomize is that geometry can intersect itself, and you don't really want that because it makes things look horrible. But we can add a little bit of randomness to it. So there we go. We've got these rocks. So let's scale them down a little bit. And how do we know what the right size is? So if we press Control 7 to look at the bottom, what we want to be doing is positioning these rocks around here. Now I want to get maybe 5 or 6 rocks here, so we can scale these down a little bit more. Position them like this. And then if you select an object and then you can press Shift D, it'll duplicate that particular object. There's 2 ways of duplicating. So if, say for example, you wanted this rock and you pressed Alt D, it would do it looks almost the same. But the difference here is, so if we take these two, if we take this rock, for example, the original one, and we were to make it big like that, then that object is affected only. But for this particular object, if we do the same, it affects both of the objects. So this is like an actual duplication of the rock, so that it's its own individual object. Whereas this is kind of like an instance of this. That might not be the correct terminology. I've not been formally educated in Blender, but I'm sure you get what I'm trying to explain. Any changes I make to this will happen to this, except I can scale this and it doesn't affect it, and I can scale this and it doesn't affect it. It's only the actual mesh that changes, you see. So let's come out of these and reset everything to what it is. Now in this particular case, I don't really want to have the objects affecting everything, so I'm going to Shift D to duplicate this. Right, so it's a decent amount of rocks there, and you can just grab on the Z axis. Just hit Z when you're grabbing something, and it'll lock to that axis. And then we can grab Z again, bring these rocks right up here. So does that look like it's okay? Maybe I'm thinking maybe we could get some more in. So what we should probably do is, you see here we have this is your selection pivot, and normally it's set to medium point, but if you change it to individual origins, it will scale them from their individual origins, because if we have it set to the medium point, it will scale them all towards, but we kind of want to leave these at the points that they're at, so we change it to individual origins and it'll scale them down. So maybe if we do it to there, and then we can shift D and another one there, and then shift D and another one there, and also shift D. Let's put one there. I think that's sufficient rocks, but they're a little bit too small now. So we're going to do the same again, and we're going to scale them up. Now, it doesn't matter too much if they overlap. It's not really a problem. Right, so what we can do now is we can select all of the rocks and shift D and Z. I'm going to bring them down. I'm going to change this back to medium point, and then we're going to rotate on the Z axis and just swizzle these around a little bit. And then we're going to shift D and Z and rotate on the Z axis again and swizzle those around. Now, what we can do, just to make things look a little bit more unique, is if we select everything, if we come up to Object, Transform, Randomize Transform, and this will give us some options as to what we want to transform. And we're looking at, we don't want to randomize the location, we don't want to randomize the scale, but we do want to randomize the rotation. So we'll leave that one ticked, and we can say 90, 90, 90 perhaps. And this will give us a little bit of variety where it's rotating all the objects in different directions. Cool. So I think if we take this object, so this is the middlemost bottom object, and of course feel free to like move things around as necessary. What we want to do now is we want to grab this middle one at the bottom, and we want to turn back on proportional editing, because this isn't just limited to edit mode. You can do this in object mode as well, you see. So what we do is we grab that, and we can grab it on the Z and move it down, and we're using this proportional editing to drag things down like this, you see. We don't necessarily want it too far away. We kind of want a nice even distribution. So maybe like that. And then also we can do the same with scale. Scrunch it up a little bit more again. There we go. So we've kind of got all of these floating rocks that get smaller and further apart toward the bottom. It's like whatever force is holding them together is kind of weaker at the bottom and stronger at the top. So like the top is like the source of the power or whatever, and it's kind of covering all of these rocks, you know, as it radiates out from the top, whatever that particular thing is. I mean, you make the backstory. I'm just doing some random stuff here. Okay, so that's that. So what I've actually done is I've made a deliberate error, which I'm going to address in 1 second, but I'm going to remind you at this point that we probably should save. So if you haven't saved at this point, save your work. It's really important, because if it crashes, you will cry, I promise you. It's really easy to get into that into the zone and forget to save. So you really need to make a habit of doing it. Always Control S, Control S. There's times where you realize that Blender is likely to crash, so you will literally Control S before you do anything. You know, you make a change, you save it. You make a change, you save it. Okay, so now that we are nicely saved, let's do some material editing, just so that we can see things so they look a little bit nicer. Because right now, if we come across into the viewport shading, we can see that things they're just white, you know, they're not very interesting. So let me show you something. So you select all this kind of doesn't make logical sense, you know, by itself. Right, so you select all your items, you add a new material, and we'll call this rock. So we change this to a nice darker grey, but oh no, only one rock is changing. That's annoying. So what we could have done is we could have applied the material at the beginning, and then when we duplicated it, it would have been on every single rock, but sadly we didn't do that. What we can do is with everything selected, and you need to make sure that the rock, or the object I should say, with the material that you want is like in the kind of the lighter orange, so you can shift and select any of the rocks, but make sure that this one is the one that you're wanting. And then if you press Control L, then you can link materials and it will apply those materials to everything. So what we want to do here is bring the specular right down and bring the roughness right up. And I think that is probably one of the more common materials that I like to use. I don't really like specular materials too much. Don't know why. There are, some instances where it is necessary, but I like the kind of the flat, matte, shaded look of objects. Now, while I'm looking at this, I'm not overly happy with the distribution of these, so I'm just going to bring them in just a little bit more. I'm keeping on proportional editing because I want to affect the objects in a very kind of almost natural way, and I'm going to come around to the side. I'm going to do the same. Just all I want to do is make it more like a point than anything else. So there we go. Just look at it from the back, that's fine. Look at it from the other side. It's kind of towards the front, but I'm going to leave it like that. Now, I just want to check, is that, yeah, that kind of didn't look too triangulated. I just wanted to check that, but it is. I think I'm just going to make this a little more random. How do I want to make it random? So if you want to focus on your selection, just hit period on your numeric keypad and it'll focus in on the objects that you've got selected. So yeah, I don't like that because it's intersecting there, you see. Let's try it through transform, randomize. There we go. That's a little bit better. Not a lot, but it still kind of looks quad-like, but it's not the end of the world. It's still going to look good. So there we go. We've got the rocks done. So the island, let's think, what kind of island do we want? Let's make a brand new material. Island. I kind of want to break away from the green grass kind of stereotype. I think I'm going to keep it as like just a very slightly off-white kind of grayish colour. Maybe a little darker than that. So things in the shaded viewport don't always look too amazing. If you come across to the rendered mode, so this is in cycles, things look a little bit better. Now, of course, we're going to do our own lighting, and this is using the Blender's internal, light HDRIs. But we need to change the specular and the roughness. So there we go. See, that's kind of looking sort of nice already. Right, let's come out of rendered mode though. Change that back to a nice sunny day. Well, actually, I quite like that one. I think that's the default, isn't it? But let's leave it on that one because it looks nice. Right, so now you see this rock right there in the middle. I kind of want to, let's grab that one and we're going to remove that material from there. We're going to add a brand new material and we're just going to call it power, I suppose. I mean, you call it whatever you want, it makes no difference really. And if we come down to emission and we can crank this up to white, and then we can pick a nice, like kind of like a magical blue, just like this. So this is now actually glowing. And I kind of want to make the emission strength something quite high, like 3, for example. And if we come back into rendered mode and we change scene lights and scene world, we can see now how it's kind of illuminating the inside of this little kind of rock cluster. And we can sort of think, okay, well, let's grab this one here as well, and we can change this one to the power node as well. And so it's like we've got little nuggets of whatever this energy is that is causing everything to stick together. These are kind of the core objects, I'd say. It's like that's holding this all together with some kind of magical force, which I think is really cool. I like that concept. I like it visually. Right. It's difficult to work in shaded mode as much as I would like it to see everything as it will be. It's not always practical. So there we go. I still think that these are a little bit spread out. So I'm just going to try some stuff. So instead of selecting everything that we've got here, what we can actually do is we can come over to select, selects by, where is it? There we go, select linked material, right? And that will just select all of those rocks there. And I'm going to make sure we are in individual origins. I'm just going to try scaling these to see how that looks a little bit. We don't actually need proportional edit on for this. Yeah, that looks a little bit better with a little bit more volume to it. Looks a little less loosey-goosey. Looks like it's more, it has more attraction, more power. Just going to move that around. Like I said, it doesn't matter too much if it's intersecting, but you need to kind of like, you see here, it sort of doesn't look too right. So just drag it around till it just until it looks right, basically. Right. Okay, so next thing we can do is just click somewhere roughly in the center, and you want to go on to Shift A and then single vert. This is another one of the extra objects. So add a single vert and it'll put you into edit mode. Now I want to make this clear because I have fallen foul to this so many times and it has had me banging my head against the wall, right? What we're looking to do is we're looking to extrude points from this point, like that, you see. However, there's sometimes where you press E and it doesn't extrude and it has you scratching your head. What is the problem? The problem is you need to be in vertex select mode. Often you'll be in edge or face and it won't let you do it, and it doesn't tell you why, and it's confusing and it's upsetting and I cry a little. Anyway, so that's that. So what we're doing here is we're going to make a tree and we want to use these points as the basis for it. So the size of the tree kind of determines the scale of the island, I suppose. So if you wanted a really small tree, then the island kind of looks pretty huge. But if you wanted like a small island, then big tree. It's all relative. Anyway, so we'll kind of have like a sort of a medium-sized big tree. I kind of want this island not to be too like massive in scale. And all we're going to do here is I'm just going to pull out a load of points just like this. Like, what does a tree look like? It sort of has all these little sub branches, doesn't it? Like this and this. It's very fractal like, isn't it, a tree? And that looks great from the front view, but of course we have the side view, which is not amazing. So we can grab this vertex and again in proportional editing, change it to smooth, and we can just sort of grab that and move it out like this. And you see, because it's not connected, it's not pulling the other branches. If I had it as not connected, it'll pull the whole lot. And this is exactly the scenario where you need to know which one to use. So we'll pull that one out here. We'll grab these and we'll drag them somewhere over here. And I think these as well. Grab these and stick these over here. And we can just extrude some more points, couldn't we? Just like this. And we can just rotate along the Z a little bit to give it a bit of a twist. So that's looking like a pretty cool little tree. Well, it's not, is it? It's a stick tree. It's a very basic stick tree, but we're going to make it into a cool little tree. So come over to your modifiers panel and add, where is it? A skin modifier, right? And there we go, a tree. No, kidding. It's not quite right, is it? So if we come into edit mode and then click on this toggle extra so we can actually see the tree. So this skin modifier, just basically adding a mesh around where the points are. We can change it to smooth shading if we want, but right now it's not going to work. Now, if we add on a subdivision surface, and then we add on smooth shading. It looks kind of cool, but I think it doesn't fit the aesthetic that we're going for in this particular case. Right, so this tree needs some roots. So let's just grab a couple of roots here, just pull them out. Right, and it is way, 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 way too massive. So if we select everything and then press Control A, we can scale the size of all the branches. We don't need proportional edit on, so we'll turn that off with O. So Control A, and we'll scale everything to a more reasonable size. So we'll start from the smallest that we probably need it, and we will make it bigger. So I guess these need to be a little bit bigger. And I think maybe if we do put proportional editing on for this, it might help keep things a little bit smoother. But Control A, there we go. We can click on this one again and this one. Control A, and then this one. Control A. So we can bring this one right up. Now, where are these points? Are they deep into the? Yeah, these are too high. They're too low. Sorry, not high. They need to be higher. Bring these up here, like so, and then we can grab this one, grab this one, grab this one. And I think what I want to do is I just want to click on this center one here and Control Plus, and it'll just select all the ones around it. And I want to deselect that one. What I want to do is I want to press W and I want to subdivide these just to get some extra geometry. Now, we probably are aware that roots don't stick up like this. This is like when a cat kind of does his weird leg thing. This tree is not a cat. So if you select a point here and we come up to the snapping menu, we grab the face project option. Now what we can do is you can turn snapping on, and then when we grab this, it'll snap it to a vertice, which is really cool. So we just there. It's like based on where it's projected. So just get the camera in sort of like a top angle. You can do the same with this one. Maybe this one. Let's turn that down a little bit. So don't want it to influence too much. We'll leave that one up. Yeah, we'll leave those as they are, I think. And then we can just adjust the sizes as we need them. Roots can be pretty chunky, but not so chunky. So I think I'm going to change to medium point, and I'm just going to grab these in. And so while I've still got this snapping on, it's just going to keep it snapped straight to the ground. And I can do this with these because if I think these look a little bit too big, for instance, I can bring them in and they'll remain attached to the ground. And that's a really handy feature, you see. This one's just gone a little bit under, so we can just drag it up a little bit. There we go. I think that's looking like quite a decent tree. Just want to move it in a little bit. I don't know, it kind of feels, I mean, trees are obviously so random. It kind of feels like I need a little bit more geometry out here. Just scale them down. So there we go. That should do it. Yeah, that looks all right, that doesn't it? Right. Now I reckon, what does this look like with this shader on there? Not quite right, but I think I want this tree to be a magic tree because I really like the way that it's illuminating everything around it. So let's make this into its own shader. So let's do new material, and it's basically when you click on this icon here, it duplicates it, makes it its own fresh instance. So we can say tree perhaps. And I've just noticed that these are a bit chunky here. I don't like these chunky boys being so chunky. So I'm just going to bring those down a little bit. These guys also need to down, and Control A for you. Make you a little bit bigger, I think. There we go. Right, so let's split the window. So do a vertical split, and let's open up the shader editor. So I really like the color of the blue tree. So what I'm going to do to begin with, I'm going to Control C to copy that color, and then Control V to paste it over the base color. Now I'm going to Shift Add, and what we're looking for is under the input Fresnel, and then we want to have under converter color ramp, and then if we plug in the FAC from the Fresnel into the FAC from the color ramp. And then if we take the color and we change that to, we grab that down and plug it into the emission strength. So now what that's doing is it's kind of glowing only around the edges, and we can change the contrast of that glow using the slider. So we can maybe crunch it down, make it a little bit more, something like that, and it kind of just gives it that edge glow. So we don't need to keep this necessarily as that blue. We can also change this color to, we could even make it a brown color if we wanted to, like that. But I kind of like the blue to it. So we can just adjust until we find the color that we like. So I do like purple colors. I just don't think that it suits this particular scene. But maybe like a darker blue to contrast the light potentially. Let's make it a little bit brighter. So what you can do is you can actually increase the value to a higher number than 1, because typically it just goes from 0 to 1 on the sliders, but if you type the value in, it'll actually pump that up a little bit more, and it'll increase the output into the emission strength, so it'll make that emission strength much higher as well. So, question is, do we want to put more subdivisions on there? Right, so we can join those areas back together because we don't need to do anything more on that. Right, so let's come back into the viewport shading. I'm going to focus on this one particular object. So, in fact, while I'm thinking about it, I just want to select all of these rocks here, and I'm going to move them into their own collection. And yeah, right. So if we press Control and Tab, we can do this this weight paint option, right? And so what we can do is we can paint areas here. Like, so if we do this like this ring, right, it creates a new vertex group just here. We do this ring around the tree. Don't want it too close. If we just, you'll see what I'm doing in a minute. Right. So let's just move to the side one a little bit, and we're going to make a new object. So let's go to mesh, and we'll make an icosphere, and we'll change the subdivisions back down to 2 for this one because we want it to fit in with the overall aesthetic. So we don't want it too detailed. So if we come to the bottom with Control and 7 and select this bottom vertex here, and we want to turn snapping off and proportional editing on. So we're going to grab on the Z, and we're going to bring right up to about there. And then we're going to select all these faces in face select mode. So that's 3 to change to face select mode, just as a reminder. And then turn off proportional editing and scale these in just a little bit, not too much, just a little bit. And then in front mode, we do E, and we'll just drag this down a little bit, and then we can scale this up, and then we can do a loop cut with Control R to add an extra set of edges to this, and then we can scale this in, and then press Control G to kind of align it, and then Control B to bevel it, and this will just break it up a little bit more. We can have more geometry or less. I think I'm going to just leave it with just that one cut there. And this is a mushroom, as you can see. I'm going to change this to mushroom. In fact, let's change this to mushroom 1. Right, so let's move this to a new collection. We'll call this mushrooms. And what I want to do is, you see how the origin is right up here. We don't want that. So just in edit mode, if we select this bottom vertex here, Shift S, cursor to selected, and then if we come into object mode, we go to object, set origin to 3D cursor. That'll move it down to where the 3D cursor is. And now we can scale this right down, just about that, and then we Control A, sorry, we press the right buttons, Control A, and we're going to apply the scale. Right, so let's come back over to our land. And we painted on that circle, didn't we? So if we come over to this button here, this is the particle edit button. And you click on the plus button here. And it defaults to emitter. What we want it on is hair. And that looks kind of like not really what we're going for. So first things first, let's come down to the vertex groups and put the density to group and the length to group. And then what we want to do is we want to come up to render, and it says render as path. You want to change this to collection. And the instance collection is the mushrooms. So now we've got a load of mushrooms dotted around everywhere, but they're all asleep on the side. This is one of the annoying things about the particle system, which I just don't quite understand why this is the case, why it's not simpler to change, but it is what it is. That's what we're stuck with, so this is what we're going to do. So we need to see underneath the instance collection, there's a checkbox here, object rotation. Click on that and nothing happens. But if we grab this and we rotate it on the y-axis, I think it's -90. Nope, it's just 90. And then all the mushrooms pop into place, which is pretty cool. Now, you see here, are they getting really small closer to the tree? That's because we, the way that the weight, let me show you the weight painting again. So you see it's blue here, green, yellow, red, blah, blah, blah. Right? So this controls both the location and the size of them. So we've got like lots around here. Now I think there's an adequate amount of mushrooms there, probably too many, because you can see here that a lot of them are like intersecting. So I'm going to play with some of the particle settings just so that we can get a little bit more of a realistic amount. So we don't need too many. So we could say maybe 500. But also the source, you can have it coming out of the faces, you can have it coming out of the vertices. So it comes out of the faces. If we change it to vertices, we get it a little bit more uniform, sadly. It gives us a nice it gives us a nice distribution, but it's a lot more uniform than we'd actually like it. So if we keep it on faces, so what we can do is we can add more particles per face, and that kind of gives it a little bit more of a distribution, but it's still kind of not right. So if instead, so maybe if we say like 10 mushrooms, for example, we're probably going to have to tweak these numbers. But if you come down to the children's section and do simple, it kind of starts to cluster these together. We can do interpolated as well, and it's a different way of like distributing the particles between the mushrooms. And you see here with the clumping, we can bring them into like localized clusters here. And I kind of like the localized clusters. It sort of, I think this is what mushrooms would probably do. Quite sure that they grow in clusters and not just, I mean, they do kind of like spread out and cover everywhere, but I think generally speaking, they are like multiple clusters altogether. So what we also need to do is we also need to change the render amount to match the display amount. Otherwise, you're going to get a lot more mushrooms than you bargained for. So what we can do as well is we can add a little more randomness to the scale. So we can maybe put this on like 0.5. Yeah, it gives a little bit more variety. Okay, that probably looks okay. So what you can do is if you're happy with it as it is, you don't need to do anything else. So if you're not happy with like the overlapping, then you can press Control A and you can click on Make Instances Real. And this will give you all of the mushrooms as individual objects. If you do that, you have to come back to the particle system and remove the particle system. And then you can like move these around however you want. But I don't think that, given the way that we're going to render this, I'm not convinced that you're going to need to do that, but it's an option for you. Right, so we called this one Mushroom 1. Let's make Mushroom 2. So we'll go Shift A, add cylinder, and we can make this maybe like Should we do 8 or 16? Do it 16. Okay, so we'll center on the object, grab Z, change that to increment, grab Z, hold control, and it will use the, so you don't need to click on that magnet icon. If you just hold control, it will apply that snapping just like there and then. So if we grab it and we make it so the origin point's down there, so we don't need to mess around moving it later, and we can scale Shift Z and just kind of make this kind of thin. We want to be aiming for this sort of size. Let's scale Shift Z, so that's probably stock sort of size. Grab this, grab Z, drag it all the way down. Let's maybe scale that one in. And I don't know, I'm just gonna make like a crazy mushroom shape here. So we can extrude, scale, and then let's rotate and extrude, scale, rotate, extrude, scale. Then let's just do inset and then extrude. Just bring it right down there and then scale. It gives us kind of like a cup kind of thing. Let's do like a bevel, sorry, a loop cut, and then a bevel. No, we'll just scale it actually, just to kind of keep it inside. We can bevel these two edges here. So I'm pressing Alt to select that loop, and then Shift Alt to select that loop. Control B. Okay, and let's just jump across into sculpt mode, and let's just give it a little bit of a weird shape. Like I think I've seen some kind of mushroom plant thing that looks a little bit like this. I don't know. There we go. So if we move this now to the mushrooms collection and we rotate Y 90, we've got a selection of different objects. We've got the different mushrooms in there. So we've got a lot of these, and we've got like 50-50. But if we wanted more or less than these, you need to come across to the particle settings again. And in the collection, click on use count, and we can add in a lot more of one rather than this. So we've got a ratio of say 1 to 6 mushrooms. So you get a lot more mushrooms, a lot fewer of the other plant things, whatever they are. I don't know. Right. So what color do these mushrooms need to be? Let's see. So I'm pretty happy with that as it is. Maybe we can do like a few more, make it a little denser perhaps. I think that looks pretty cool. Okay, so let's look at the materials for these guys. So let's add a new mushroom material. In fact, let me just try to see what the tree looks like on it. Oh, that is digital blasphemy right there. Yeah. Let's forget about doing it any other way. Let's just literally bop that on there. That looks amazing. There we go. I like that. We don't need to do anything more with that. That's so good. Right, so let's leave that as it is because that looks... Oh, I love that. Yeah, okay, so let's grab these mushrooms here. Where are we? Let's close that one down. Mushrooms, right. So we don't really want to see this. It doesn't need to be rendered, so we can untick all of these. There we go. Leave that alone. Come back to that. Never. Right, wow. Okay, cool. So let's remember to save and press Shift C to reset your cursor to the middle of the screen as well. So let's see if we can add a little bit more atmosphere to this. So if we press Shift A and then curve, and this is where our extra curve objects comes in. So you go to curve spirals and then Archimedean. Okay, and it'll give us like a circle here, but this is not exactly what we're looking for. We're gonna have to modify this. So let's start with the radius. Let's bring it right down. We want this radius to be somewhere in line with this bottom rock here. Let's just make this kind of small, and then what we're going to do is we're going to increase the height. I'm going to crank this up to about, maybe let's try it up to there, and we want the radius growth. We want that to come out to maybe there. So we want this outside of the rocks. We want more turns as well. So let's add 5 turns. And let's bring the height back down. Oh, that's a lot of turns. That's probably a little bit excessive. Let's do 3 turns. That to there. Bring this in a little bit. Just a case of modifying the radius with the radius growth just to get it looking. That'll probably do. Nice spiral there. Okay. Right, so what we want to add now is just a little plane. Now this is going to be too big, but we'll work with this for the minute, and we're going to add a new particle system. And if we scroll down to the field weights, and just want to get rid of gravity, so if we press space to play, we can see all these particles are coming up. Now these aren't lasting too long. We need to increase the duration of this animation to begin with, because our animation, let me just add a new window so we can see horizontal split and shift F12 a couple of times to get to the timeline. We can see we've got 250 frames. The animation is 200. So I'm just going to change this to 240 frames just because we've got a 24 frames per second. This will give us exactly 10 seconds. It doesn't really make a lot of difference. You choose your frame length, whatever works best for you. So we can now say frame length is 240. So this will run for the duration of the animation. Now, what I want to happen is I don't want it to start with nothing and then kind of build up to maximum, basically. So I'm going to do the frame start at negative 240. This will probably add a little bit of lag at the beginning of the animation while it calculates where it needs to be. But as we can see, if we pause it and we go back to the beginning, the animation starts with the particles already there. Right, so let's decrease the scale of this. I want this a little bit smaller. And we also need to click show emitter, because we don't want to render the emitter, we just want the particles. So now we can see we've got particles kind of going into the center there. Right. So what we can do now is we select our curve again. And if we come across to the physics tab, add force field. And where the type says force, change that to curve guide. And so we'll see we've got a circle here and a circle here. This is the start, this is the end. And now when we press play, just put it into this shading mode. You can see all the particles zipping around this curve guide, but they're going mega fast, and we don't really want that. And the reason that they're going so fast is that the way this works is that when we look at the particle emitter, the particles have got a lifetime of 50. So that basically means that the particles, they have to start here and finish at the end here within that 50 frame lifetime. So we can actually say, okay, well, let's make it a little bit slower. Let's make the particles 240. You can see they're going a lot slower there. And maybe we can do like 480, double that. So yeah, there's a nice slow. I want a very gentle kind of flow. But as you can see, it's starting halfway through. So we can say minus 480. And this should start there. There we go. Perfect. Well, not quite perfect, but it's good. It's good. And we can adjust things like we can maybe scale this out here, for example. And that should give us a better kind of width. Also, what we can do is in the physics properties for the curve, we can adjust like this clumping amount. So that you can see here, this clumping is making it, if you put it to 1, it goes to like literally really tight, and then we can change this to -1. It gives us a little bit more kind of variation. And then we've got the shape as well, so we can make that really nice and neat, or we can put that to kind of really expanded. So a lot is based on the size of the emitter as well, you see. So the bigger the emitter, the further apart these things are. Now, I'm not sure why these things are like behaving the way that they're behaving, but I do like it. Although there's too many particles for sure. So let's reduce this to like 100. Right, so I'm gonna make this a little bit smaller. Okay, I'm mostly happy with that. It's not quite behaving as I would like it to, as I expect it to, but it does seem to be, for the most part, it's an interesting kind of thing there. But yeah, whatever. It's gonna look good. It's gonna look good. Right. So now what we're gonna do is let's just pop our 3D cursor somewhere in the scene, and we can make a icosphere. In edit mode, we're going to scale it down to 0.1, I suppose. And I think if we go all in with this tree material and give it that tree material, and then if we come back over to the particle emitter, and instead of halo, we can say objects, and then we can just eyedropper click on that object there. And now we've got these little kind of fireflies, I suppose. Let's just pause it there so we can see them. And they're kind of floating around, which I think is kind of nice. I'm still not this scale shift Z apply. Curve was annoying me a little bit, but I made it a little bit smaller. So that ain't too bad, is it? It's not too bad at all. Right. So let's have a look at this from the camera view, because we're getting closer to being able to render this. But we're not quite done, not just yet. I want to bring this just a little bit further back, and we'll just leave that there for a minute. Bring the frame back to frame 1. And then what we want to do is, like we did before, we're going to select linked material. And then we're just going to grab these extra... Oh no, why has my mushrooms disappeared under there? What have I done? Oh no. Okay, that's really random. Why have my mushrooms disappeared under there? I did not even notice that had happened. Okay, this is unusual. I must have clicked something and not... Bear with me. Okay, so I had a little bit of a derp moment just now, and I realized what I'd done. So, without thinking about it, when I added this force into affect these particles, it was also affecting these particles. God knows why, they're just sat there in the middle. But the way that you fix this is, I've taken this curve here, this spiral, I've moved it to its own collection called swirls. Now, what we need to do is, if we select this particle system, and we come back down to the field whites, and we click on the effector collection, and we change that to swirls. So now these particles are only being affected by this force. They won't be affected by any other force. And then the same kind of idea with this one. We don't want any effectors affecting it, so we can just change that to collection. And there we go. That fixed the problem there. So yeah, that was a little bit of a silly oversight on my part. So yeah, but it's good to like have these problems, because you can demonstrate what things go wrong and how to fix them. So yeah, what I was trying to explain is that we can come back to the first frame of the animation, and if we take this rock here, in fact, we need to take all the rocks. So let's do objects and select linked material, and that gives all those rocks. The alternative way to do that actually is you could just like literally come over to this collection, and we can select objects, and it selects everything in there. Now, what I'd probably add on as well is probably the particle emitter. Actually, yeah, we'll add on the particle emitter. It's not that big of an issue. I don't think it's going to make too much of a difference. No, actually, change my mind. No, we're not. No particle emitter. We're just going to leave. We're just going to touch the rocks. So with the rocks, we want to press I, and we're going to put in the location and rotation keyframe there. And then I think if we come across to, say maybe, so we've got 240 frames, haven't we? So if we come across to 120 and we select just this bottom rock here, and again, we're going to turn on the proportional editing. We're going to grab this and we're going to move it down. So just a little bit. Don't worry that it's moving the other thing. In fact, do worry that it's moving the thing. Just grab that effector, bring that to 1, and then we can keyframe the location of the curve. Sorry. Also grab this one, keyframe the location of that. So now if we grab this bottom one and we grab it and we want to put the influence quite high, and we grab it on the Z and just bring it down just a little bit. We don't want it too much, right? Sorry, frame 120, grab it, Z, tiny bit, and then back select the rocks, select objects, and then we're going to apply location and rotation there. And now you can see that this has moved, but if we flick back here, it'll reset it because we didn't keyframe it at this point. We only keyframed the rocks. And I think as well, if we change to individual origins, if we slightly rotate these things, oops, let's turn off proportional edit for this one. We don't need it. Just slightly, you only need a very, very subtle changes to have big differences. All right, so location, rotation there. So we can see there, it just subtly moves. And then if we take this and we shift D, move that to 40, and now these rocks will just subtly move. You don't really notice it, but it gives a little bit more life to the scene. So there we go. Right, I think what we can do now is we can recenter the cursor with Shift C, and we're going to add in a mesh. We're going to add a plane, and I think it would be useful for us to scale this by maybe 20 perhaps, and grab it, move it down, 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 so it's well out of the way. And then we'll come back here and we'll grab this edge to the far side away from us. We're going to extrude that on the Z axis, and then we're going to take this back edge there and Control B to bevel, and we're just going to put in 10 cuts perhaps, or 21 I should say. Right, so now we can shade that smooth, and this gives us a nice backdrop that we can work with. And I think maybe if we grab it closer, bring it a little bit closer to the backdrop to get that kind of curve in there. So we can add a material to this, and we'll call it backdrop. So now we just need to fiddle around with it and get something that looks right. So definitely reduce the specular, increase the roughness. What kind of color do we want? So, I mean, these colors contrast with it, but I don't really like that kind of, I think sort of dark colors in general are going to work really well. Let me just do a test render of this. I've lost all the particles again. Okay. Right, so while I'm thinking about it, let's just change the max samples to 100 because we don't need too many. What the issue is, I've just realized, is I disabled this in the render, but we've got it on screen, so we just need to move this off screen. So take these guys, you and you, grab those on the x-axis, just pop them right over there, out of the view. Okay, so you can see here the particles down here, they're on frame 0, so they shouldn't be like that. They should be further along. Oh no, are they further along? Or are they too small to see? It might be that Blender's... Oh no, there we go. It's because they animate from frame 1, I think. So I think that makes for a lovely scene. Now I hope this has been helpful to people. I hope you've learned something. I I've enjoyed making this, that's for sure. I just like this idea of this magical tree levitating an island in the air. So yeah, anyway, if you enjoyed this, you learned something, you want to see more content from me, then don't forget to hit that like button and that subscribe button. And YouTube will send you my content when it feels that it is the correct thing for you. What, you know, if it thinks you will enjoy my content, it'll send it for you. Right. Hopefully I'll see you guys in the next one.